All right, so we're diving deep today
Deep.
into Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck. And, our listeners, they're learners. They like
Oh, yeah.
to get to the point and really like those aha moments. So we're going to try to help
Sorry to it.
get right to it.
What's interesting about this book is that it kind of turns the whole self-help thing on its head a little bit.
Yeah.
Because instead of like chasing happiness, 24/7,
Yeah.
it's like maybe it's more about like choosing what you struggle for and just like owning your imperfections.
Right off the bat, he throws this curveball, this guy Charles Bukowski.
Yeah.
And he kind of sets him up as like this guy who was like a poet, but like kind of a mess, like an alcoholic, womanizer, chronic gambler, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But his writing resonated with people.
It did.
And so there's this like rawness and honesty to it.
Well, he kind of embodies this whole idea that you don't have to be perfect to be successful.
Yeah.
And in fact, like those rough edges,
Yeah.
What we would typically be like, oh, that's a loser quality.
Right.
That could be your superpower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he found fame because he was just so himself, warts and all.
It's like he was giving the middle finger to this whole like pressure to be perfect.
Yes.
To fit into some kind of mold.
Absolutely.
Which honestly can feel like such a relief.
It is.
Because I think everybody has felt that pressure, that,
Oh, yeah.
that feedback loop from hell, as he calls it.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're just like striving for perfection.
Yeah, you get anxious, you get stressed out.
You never feel like you're enough.
You never feel like you're enough, and it's just like a hamster wheel. You never get off.
Right. So we're ditching this pursuit of perfection.
Yeah, chuck it.
But then he throws this other curveball,
Yeah.
which is choosing your struggles.
Yeah, yeah.
And he tells this kind of wild story about this prince who grows up in total luxury but finds it all meaningless. So then the prince thinks that like embracing suffering is the answer.
Yeah.
And he runs away to try to find it.
Yeah, like he seeks out suffering, which is just like no.
It's interesting because it's like the takeaway is not that suffering is good.
Suffering for the sake of suffering is pointless.
Right.
But choosing your battles, choosing like what you're willing to struggle for.
Right.
What actually gives your life meaning.
Yes.
Even if it's hard, that's what matters.
It's kind of like when I think back to when I was trying to become a musician.
Okay.
I had this like grand vision of like myself up on stage,
Right.
rocking out.
Yeah.
The crowd's going wild.
Surfing.
But I didn't really love the process, like the daily grind, the late night gigs and all that.
Yeah.
And I never really got off the ground.
So you're saying like the importance of enjoying the journey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just like fixating on
Destination.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
If you don't like the struggle, if the struggle doesn't resonate with you,
Right.
then the success isn't going to feel like success,
Totally.
even if you achieve it.
And speaking of missing the point,
Yes.
Manson brings up this character, Jimmy,
Jimmy.
who is all talk and no action.
Oh, Jimmy.
He's got these like grandiose business schemes,
Right.
never follows through,
Never follows through.
blames everybody else.
Blames everyone else. Yep. Classic Jimmy. So he represents this idea of entitlement, right? Like
Right.
he believes he deserves success without putting in the work.
Right,
And so that obviously is going to prevent growth
right,
because it's all about excuses
right.
as opposed to like taking radical responsibility.
This reminds me of this crazy thing that happened to me in middle school. I got called into the principal's office and accused of bringing drugs to school.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was wild.
That's intense.
And they like searched my locker, my backpack, everything.
Wow.
And it turns out that someone had started this rumor, and the principal, bless his heart, just kind of jumped to conclusions.
Oh, no.
But the whole experience just left me feeling so powerless
Yeah.
and misunderstood.
Makes you think how these past experiences,
Yeah.
especially ones that feel unfair or even traumatic,
Yeah.
can like color how we see the world later.
It was totally surreal.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting, though, because even though you were innocent in that situation,
right.
you could almost see how that could plant the seeds for a sense of entitlement,
Yeah.
but like a different kind than Jimmy's.
Right.
Like almost like a way of overcompensating
Yeah. Yeah.
for that feeling of injustice.
You know what? You're totally right. I became super hypersensitive to like any feeling of being wronged or rejected,
Yeah.
especially in relationships.
Yeah.
Like I was constantly trying to prove my worthiness,
Ah.
but in all the wrong ways.
Yeah. That's what happens, when we have these unexamined traumas.
Yeah.
We develop these patterns of behavior to try to protect ourselves from that pain again.
Yeah.
But sometimes those defenses, they show up in unhealthy ways.
Right.
Like a sense of entitlement or
Yeah.
need to control or...
Looking back, it's clear I was stuck in that cycle.
Yeah.
Like I became a bit of a player,
Mhm.
bouncing from one superficial relationship to the next.
Right.
And it took me a while to realize I was just trying to rewrite the past instead of truly connecting.
Yeah. And that's where this whole message of self-awareness comes in.
Yeah.
It's not about blaming our past, but it's about understanding how it shapes us
Yeah.
so that we can break free.
And then he talks about this idea of choosing our values wisely.
Yeah.
And he uses this example of Hiroo Onoda, this Japanese soldier who spent almost 30 years hiding in the jungle after World War II ended.
Crazy.
Because he refused to believe that it was over.
He's like, nope, still going.
Yeah.
Ah.
He was so committed to his duty to those orders that he endured decades of hardship and isolation.
It's an incredible example, though, of how powerful our values are.
Yeah.
Even when they're misguided.
Right, right.
He really believed it.
It makes you think about all the things that you've held on to, like the ways you've measured success and failure.
Yeah.
For years, I beat myself up about my relationship with my brother. We're not very close.
Okay.
And I used to think that made me a bad brother.
So it sounds like you were kind of using this metric for good brother.
Yeah.
It wasn't really serving you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was comparing myself to all these other people who seemed to have these perfect sibling relationships.
Right. Those are the ones you see on TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
But real life is...
But then I realized my brother and I, we have this mutual respect and trust, even if we don't talk all the time.
Yeah.
And maybe that's actually a better measure
That's beautiful.
of a strong bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about questioning our values and the metrics we use to judge ourselves. We get so caught up in what we think we should be doing
Right.
that we don't even stop to think if it actually aligns with what's important, with our true selves.
Yeah. And sometimes the things we think are so important are actually holding us back.
Totally.
And he talks about this musician, Dave Mustaine,
Oh, yeah?
who got kicked out of Metallica, but went on to have huge success
Huge success.
with Megadeth,
Yeah.
but still considered himself a failure,
Yeah.
because he was comparing himself
To his past.
to his past.
Yeah.
So even though...
He achieved what he thought he wanted.
Right.
He was still unhappy
Yeah,
because he was using the wrong metric.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that true fulfillment comes from choosing values that are aligned with our core selves.
Yes.
Not from chasing those external markers of success.
I love that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
What defines success for one person might not even be on the radar for someone else.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Totally. And chasing pleasure or material success,
Right.
that's often a trap
Yeah.
because those things are fleeting.
This is where I had a major aha moment.
Okay, let's hear it.
He talks about this idea of taking responsibility for our own problems,
Okay.
even when we aren't at fault.
That's a tough one
Yeah.
because we think responsibility means blame.
Right. But what he's suggesting
Yeah.
is that even when bad things happen to us, we still have the power to choose our response,
Right.
how we interpret the situation and what we learn from it.
It's about choosing our response to
Yeah.
what life throws at us.
And he shares this incredible story about William James, who is considered the father of American psychology. And this guy struggled with debilitating health problems his entire life.
Yeah.
But instead of succumbing to despair,
Right.
he decided to conduct this experiment.
Oh, interesting.
For 1 year, he chose to believe that he was 100% responsible
Wow.
for everything that happened in his life.
Okay.
And his life was completely transformed.
Right.
He went on to have this groundbreaking career,
Yeah.
a loving family, a lasting legacy, all because he chose to own his life.
Wow.
Even the parts that felt unfair or out of his control.
That's such a powerful example
Isn't it?
of how our perception of responsibility really does shape our reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about ignoring injustice or hardship,
Yeah.
but recognizing that even in the face of those things,
Yeah.
we still have that power to choose
Right.
our response.
And by owning our choices,
Yes.
even in those difficult circumstances, we empower ourselves
Yeah.
to create a more fulfilling life.
It's about taking back control.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, love it.
And this leads to another key concept,
Okay.
which is being willing to question our beliefs, even the ones we hold most dear.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because, it's uncomfortable to admit we might be wrong,
Right.
but it is so essential for growth.
And he shares the story about Meredith, this journalist who recovered a repressed memory of being sexually abused by her father.
Oh, wow. Only to realize later that the memory was false.
Oh my gosh.
It's a heartbreaking story,
It is.
but it highlights how easily our brains can be tricked.
Especially when it comes to trauma
Right.
or those really deep-seated beliefs.
It's like we can unconsciously create these narratives
Yes.
that fit our worldview,
Totally.
even if they aren't rooted in reality.
And so that's why self-awareness and critical thinking
Yes.
are so important.
Yeah.
We need to challenge our assumptions
Right.
and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
It's like we're constantly constructing these narratives to
Yeah.
explain the world,
Totally.
even if they're based on faulty assumptions.
Right.
And he uses this fascinating experiment to illustrate this.
Okay.
He describes how people are put in a room with these buttons to press,
Uh-huh.
and they're told that if they do something specific, a light will flash, indicating they've earned a point.
Okay.
But the catch is,
Yeah.
the points are totally random.
What?
There's no pattern.
Oh my God. No sequence?
Yeah.
But people develop these elaborate theories
Of course.
about how to get the points, even though their actions have nothing to do with the outcome.
Oh, that's so human.
Right?
It shows how desperately our brains crave meaning.
Yeah.
We try to create order out of chaos,
Yeah.
even when it doesn't exist.
It's like we'd rather cling to a painful certainty than risk the discomfort of being wrong.
Which is so crazy.
Right.
Because as he points out, being wrong is actually an opportunity for growth.
Right.
It's recognizing that our sense of self is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
We're not these fixed entities.
Right.
And so by letting go of those rigid beliefs about who we are,
Right.
we open ourselves up to new possibilities and new experiences.
He encourages us to become these, like, architects of our own beliefs.
I love that.
Instead of clinging to these outdated narratives,
Yeah.
we can choose to question, explore,
Yes.
construct beliefs that actually serve us.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes that means confronting our deepest fears.
Oh, yeah, the scary stuff.
Yeah, he shares this story about a woman who refuses to date
Oh.
because she's convinced she's not attractive enough.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It's a classic example of how fear holds us back.
Yes.
You know, she's created this story about herself that prevents her from taking action
Right.
and potentially finding love.
Because it's easier to stay stuck in the certainty
Oh,
of what we know
yeah.
than to risk that vulnerability
Right. Right.
and potential rejection.
But as he points out, that kind of thinking is a trap.
It is.
Keeps us small and prevents us from experiencing all that life has to offer.
And it's all based on this story we're telling ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we start to shift these deeply ingrained beliefs?
Well, he suggests asking ourselves this simple but powerful question.
Okay, I'm ready.
What if I'm wrong?
Yeah. I love that.
By challenging our assumptions,
Yeah.
we can open ourselves up to new perspectives and possibilities.
Totally. It's about cultivating that sense of curiosity and humility.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, hit me.
Because now he dives into the big one.
Oh, boy.
Death.
Yeah.
The big D.
So
He's saying that our awareness of death
yes.
is actually the driving force behind a lot of our choices
Yeah.
and a lot of our behaviors.
He talks about these immortality projects,
Yes.
as Ernest Becker called them.
Right.
The things we create to give our lives meaning
Uh-huh.
and distract us from the inevitability of our own demise.
Yeah, we're trying to leave our mark
Right.
on the world.
And he illustrates this with a deeply moving story about his friend Josh, who died tragically when they were both teenagers. Yeah. And it was clearly a pivotal moment in his life.
Yeah.
It forced him to confront the fragility of life
Uh-huh.
and question the values he had been pursuing.
Wow.
And it made him realize that there's nothing to be afraid of, because ultimately we all face the same fate.
You know, loss has a way of clarifying our priorities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It forces us to really think about what matters
Yeah.
and what we want to do with the time that we have.
I remember so vividly the day a close friend of mine died suddenly.
Yeah.
And the shock of it all just made me realize
Yeah.
life is short.
It is.
And we don't have time
Yeah.
to waste on things that don't truly matter.
That's the thing about death.
Yeah.
It strips away all the superficial stuff.
Yeah.
And it reveals what's really important.
So he introduces Ernest Becker's work, who argued that this fear of death is a primary motivator in our lives.
Right.
And we create these immortality projects, things like our careers, relationships, achievements,
Yeah.
to try to leave a lasting mark
Right.
on the world and transcend our own mortality.
Like we're trying to cheat death.
Right.
In a way.
But in the process, we might be missing out on the true meaning of life. Totally. It's like we're so busy building this monument to ourselves that we forget to actually live.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he suggests that facing our mortality can actually be incredibly liberating.
Okay. Also.
By accepting the reality of death.
Yeah.
We can free ourselves from this need to constantly strive for something that's ultimately unattainable.
Yeah.
And we can choose values that are rooted in the present moment, in a genuine connection, in living a life that's true to ourselves.
Beautiful. So this all leads up to this epic moment in the book.
Okay.
Where he describes himself standing on a cliff in Turkey.
Wow.
Contemplating the vastness of life and the inevitability of his own death.
He's literally on the edge.
Literally on the edge.
Right.
Like he's standing at the precipice of his own existence, forced to confront this ultimate question.
Yeah.
What does it all mean?
And in that moment, he finds peace.
Wow.
He realizes that death is not something to be feared, but rather something to be embraced. Wow. It's the one certainty we all share.
It is.
And it can actually help us to live more fully and authentically in the present moment.
That's so profound.
Yeah.
By accepting our mortality, we can let go of that need to control everything, to strive for perfection, to accumulate possessions, achievements. And we can focus on what really matters. Connection, love, purpose.
It's like death isn't the opposite of life, but rather a part of it.
Yes.
And by acknowledging that, we can actually start to live more meaningfully.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of his message.
Yeah.
It's not about nihilism or giving up on life, but it's about embracing the reality of our existence.
Right.
With all its imperfections and limitations.
Yeah.
And it's about choosing to focus our energy on what truly matters.
Yeah.
Knowing that our time here is finite.
Yeah.
And precious.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
One that really resonated with me. So what happens when we start to embrace that sunny side of death?
Right.
How does it change the way we live our lives?
That's a great question. And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned because we're going to go even deeper.
Now going deep.
Into the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Love it. So we're back, and last time we really dug into some heavy stuff like entitlement, flawed beliefs, and even death.
Yeah, the big one.
But remember, there's a bright side to all this.
Okay, so how does accepting that we're going to die actually help us live better?
Well, when we're always trying to avoid death or achieve some kind of immortality, we miss out on the now.
Right, we're always looking ahead.
Yeah, trying to achieve this or that, and we forget to just appreciate being alive.
Makes sense, like we miss the scenery because we're focused on the finish line.
Exactly, but when we accept that our time is limited, it can make us more present.
Okay, I get that, but how do we actually make that shift? How do we actually live that way?
Well, Manson says it starts with choosing our values carefully.
Right. The things we really care about.
Yeah, the things that drive us. And it's not about being indifferent to everything.
So we still need to care about stuff.
Absolutely. It's about choosing what to give a feck about.
Okay, so how do we know what to care about? How do we choose those values?
Manson talks about good values and bad values.
Okay, give me an example.
Like honesty, that's a good one. Integrity, compassion, creativity, things like that.
But those are the things that really matter.
Exactly. Those are internally driven. And they lead to good things for you and others.
Okay. And bad values would be things like what?
Money, fame, status, approval, stuff like that.
Right. The shiny things.
Yeah. And those might feel good for a little bit, but they don't last.
So how do we shift away from chasing those things? How do we start valuing the good stuff?
It starts by looking inward, paying attention to your thoughts and feelings.
Okay. So like noticing what makes me anxious or what I'm always striving for.
Yeah. And ask yourself, why do I care about this? Is this really serving me? It's all about questioning your assumptions and motivations.
Digging a little deeper.
Exactly. And sometimes you have to let go of values you've held for a long time, even if it's scary.
Right. That's where the growth happens.
Yeah. When you challenge yourself to align with your true self.
Manson talks about how these immortality projects can be a way of avoiding reality.
Right, we put so much into our careers or achievements to leave a mark, but we forget to live.
We're so busy building a legacy that we forget to experience life.
Exactly. But when we let go of that need, we can live more authentically right now.
That makes me think about saying no.
Oh, yeah. Boundaries?
Yeah, Manson talks about traveling the world, but not really committing to anything.
Right. He was spreading himself too thin.
So sometimes it's better to go deep than to go wide.
Exactly. Invest your time in what really matters and say no to the rest.
It's like making space for the things that light you up.
Exactly. The things that align with your values.
He had this realization in Russia, of all places. He was struck by how blunt people were.
Really?
Yeah, they just said what they thought, no sugarcoating.
Interesting. So he's saying honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, builds trust.
Yeah, like you know where you stand with people.
So you can connect on a deeper level.
Makes you think about how often we say yes just to avoid conflict or to people pleaser.
Right. And we end up sacrificing our own needs.
Yeah, living a life that's not really our own.
And that's where boundaries come in.
Okay, so remind me, what exactly is a healthy boundary?
It's about being clear about what you're responsible for and what you're not.
Okay.
It's saying no when something doesn't fit with your values, even if it disappoints someone.
Right, and respecting other people's boundaries too.
Exactly. It's all about mutual respect and understanding.
He says a lot of relationship problems come from a lack of boundaries.
Yeah, people try to fix each other or take responsibility for each other's emotions.
Right, like the classic victim and savior dynamic.
Yeah, one person is always helpless and the other one feels obligated to rescue them.
But that's not healthy, right?
No, it prevents both people from taking responsibility for their own growth.
So setting boundaries is about allowing each person to own their own stuff.
Exactly, their emotions, needs, and choices.
It's about support without codependency.
Yeah, creating a space for both people to thrive.
It can be so hard to say no, though, especially to people we care about.
It is, but it's a skill worth developing.
Because ultimately it strengthens relationships.
Yeah, it builds trust and authenticity.
We talked about how we often prioritize other people's feelings over our own.
Right, we censor ourselves to avoid conflict.
But Manson says honest communication is key to intimacy.
Even when it's tough.
He uses the example of telling his wife when he doesn't like an outfit.
Oh, wow, really?
It sounds small, but it shows he's willing to be real, even if it risks a disagreement.
And that builds trust.
Yeah, it says, I care enough about you to be honest.
And when both people do that, it creates a space for real connection.
So we've talked about values, boundaries, honesty. What else can we do to live better?
Well, Manson also talks about taking action and embracing failure.
So don't wait for the perfect moment.
Nope, just get started, even if it's messy.
He talks about how he used to procrastinate on big projects.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
But then he realized that just starting, even on a small part, created momentum.
So action creates motivation.
Yeah, instead of waiting to feel motivated.
It's like, just take the first step.
And embrace the stumbles along the way.
Right, that's where the learning happens.
It's so ingrained in us to fear failure.
It is. But what if we saw it as a stepping stone?
That's what he calls the failure-success paradox.
Okay, explain that way.
Embracing failure is actually how we achieve success.
Interesting. So we need to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Right. Sometimes we have to make mistakes to create something great.
He takes the pressure off.
Yeah, it's not about our ego anymore, it's about growth. It reminds me of that story about Picasso selling a napkin drawing for a fortune.
Oh yeah, what was it, like $20,000?
Yeah, and when the woman questioned the price, he said, "It took me over 60 years to draw this."
Wow, that's powerful.
It shows that mastery comes from years of practice and failures.
So failure is not the enemy.
Nope, it's our teacher.
It helps us grow and reach our full potential.
So choose your values, set boundaries, be honest, take action, and embrace failure.
That's a good recipe for a meaningful life.
It is, but there's more to unpack.
Oh, there's always more.
So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive.
We're going even deeper into the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Welcome back to our deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about this idea of not giving a feck,
Yeah.
and we've explored all these ideas about self-awareness,
Values, boundaries.
even death.
Yeah, the big stuff.
But now I'm wondering, like, how do we actually put this into practice in our everyday lives?
Right. How do we take these concepts and make them actionable?
Yeah, we've talked about choosing our values wisely, but how do we even know what our values are?
That's the thing. It's not a one-time decision.
Right.
It's like this ongoing process of self-discovery.
Yeah.
And it takes paying attention to what brings you joy, what motivates you, what aligns with your sense of purpose.
Manson says we really need to question those values that are based on external things.
Yeah, like money, fame, status, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
those things, they might feel good temporarily.
Right, they're fleeting.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your focus to the things that are internally driven,
Yeah.
like authenticity,
Okay.
connection, creativity, growth.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really nourish your soul.
Okay, so how do we actually make that shift?
Well, it starts with small choices,
Okay.
baby steps.
Uh-huh.
You know, what are you doing right now that's driven by that need for external validation?
Oh, interesting.
Are you hanging out with people you don't really like just to impress them?
Yeah.
Are you in a job you hate just for the paycheck?
Right.
Start by becoming aware of those patterns
Wow.
and then making different choices,
Okay.
even if they're small at first.
So just kind of like those micro adjustments
Yes, micro adjustments. I love that.
to bring our actions more in line with our values.
Yes,
And it's okay if we don't get it perfect right away.
of course. It's about progress,
Mm.
not perfection.
Right.
And remember, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, huh?
The key is to learn from them
And keep moving.
and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's all about that upward trajectory.
Manson talks a lot about boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
We talk about this in terms of relationships.
Mm.
But how do boundaries play out in other areas of our lives?
Well, think about it. They're essential for protecting your time, your energy, your well-being.
No matter what we're talking about.
No matter what. Work, friendships, family.
So it's about saying no to things that drain us,
Yes.
even if it means disappointing someone.
It's about prioritizing your own needs and values,
Right.
even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You have to take care of yourself first.
This makes me think about work-life balance.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, like how do we set those boundaries around work?
Right. We're constantly told to be productive and achieve.
It's hard to switch off.
And that's where that do something principle comes in.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a workaholic.
Right.
It's about finding that balance
Mm-hmm.
that lets you pursue your passions and make a contribution without burning out.
And he talks about embracing failure as part of that process.
Yeah, which can be tough to hear.
It.
But think about it. What if you shifted your mindset from a fear of failure to a curiosity about learning?
Yeah.
What can you learn from your mistakes?
Yeah.
How can you use those experiences to improve your skills and your strategies?
Right.
It's about seeing failure as a stepping stone.
Not a roadblock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by embracing it, you actually free yourself up to take more risks and experiment and push yourself.
Right. Yeah.
That's where the real growth happens.
It makes me think about finding our purpose. Manson doesn't explicitly talk about purpose in the book,
Right.
but it seems like it kind of naturally emerges
Yeah.
when we start living in alignment with our values.
I totally agree with that. When you're clear about what you care about, when you're setting healthy boundaries
Yeah.
and embracing those failures,
Yeah.
that's when purpose starts to blossom.
So it's not about finding this like preordained purpose.
Right.
It's more about creating our own purpose
Reading it, yeah.
based on what matters to us.
Exactly.
So it could be our work,
It could be
relationship.
our creative pursuits
Yeah.
or contributions to the community.
And it doesn't have to be this like grand world-changing thing.
No, it could be something small,
Yeah.
bringing joy to the people around you,
Right.
pursuing a hobby that you love,
Yeah.
making a difference in your local community.
So we've talked about values, boundaries, honest communication, taking action.
Embracing failure, finding our purpose.
What else can we take away from this book?
Well, one of the biggest things is that life is about making choices.
Yeah.
We can't control everything that happens,
Right.
but we can choose how we respond to it.
How we interpret it.
Exactly.
What we learn from it.
It's about recognizing that we have agency,
Even in the chaos.
even in the mess.
It's about taking ownership of our lives.
Yes.
Even the parts that we don't love.
Warts and all.
And recognizing that we actually have the power to shape our reality.
You are the architect of your life.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it.
And it's about remembering that happiness is not a destination. It's a journey.
It's a process.
It's something we cultivate through our choices and actions.
It's about finding meaning and purpose,
Yeah.
even when things are tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
What are the things in your life that you're giving too many frecks about?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What are those values, beliefs, expectations that are draining your energy and preventing you from living a truly fulfilling life?
And on the flip side, what are you not giving enough facts about?
Right.
What passions have you been ignoring?
Yeah.
What if you gave yourself permission to really care about those
I
things?
go all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This book is an invitation to question everything,
Yeah.
reevaluate your priorities, and create a life that's in alignment with what truly matters.
It's a reminder that we have the power to choose,
Yes.
to embrace our imperfections,
To find meaning in the face of our own mortality.
to live a life that's true to ourselves.
Yes, a life that's filled with purpose and meaning and joy.
So take some time to reflect on these questions.
Yeah.
What are you willing to give a feck about?
And what are you ready to let go of?
What would it look like to live a life that's truly authentic to you?
Because that's the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Choosing what matters most and creating a life that reflects your true self.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep choosing your facts wisely.